Hey, everybody, Off the Mic Sports Network here. Another edition of Off the Top Rope. Thanks, everybody who was on the live post show. I wanted to give some more expanded thoughts. Not a whole lot negative, really, about this Dynamite. It actually was a pretty damn good show. Um, if I'm being completely honest, I would have liked for a lot of this stuff to have happened a lot sooner. Um, if they could have made the 300th edition feel like, it was more of a part of this thing, was more about building to All In, which, if that's my minor quibble for that means they were doing a pretty good job. So I got to hand it to Tony Khan. They actually had a pretty good night out in Ontario, California, which is about 40 some odd miles away from where I live. Um, and, the Southern California usually always delivers on wrestling crowds, and the Ontario crowd, even if it was 5,000 people, a pretty lively bunch. Like, they were really into this show. So, good night for AEW. And like I said, even though I'm generally very hard on AEW, it's because I was a day one guy. They were just kind of a beacon of light. And to see where this company is now is not what it used to be. But congratulations on getting the 300 shows. Like, this is that's a great milestone. So specifically, I've been a very doom and gloom about the outlook for All In Texas because a lot of the outcomes didn't like some of the potential outcomes didn't seem very desirable. But with one decision to after revising, and I don't know if this was their plan all along, one decision to add one stipulation to one match may have changed the course of AEW for the next year, and an outcome that I did not want to see, which was Jon Moxley retaining the AEW World Championship at All In, all of a sudden potentially becomes maybe the best possible outcome for AEW as a company, because it creates one thing that I have been clamoring for and craving for so long: long-term stories and multiple ways to branch it off and get that story tree going on and feeding into multiple different angles and potentially just absolutely injecting new life into this company. And what I'm talking about is what happened between Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay, seemingly making a deal to have their tag match with the Young Bucks at All In Texas. Initially, it was just a pretty vague, the EVP tagline is on the line. Some people thought that, whoever won the match was going to be the EVPs of AEW, which we knew, like Swerve and Will Ospreay were not going to be EVPs. Come on, that's ridiculous. And then obviously, the element of, the Young Bucks, that's really their whole identity, really, for the last 2 years of AEW television, is they're the EVPs. They're snobbish pricks, authority figures, and using their authority to get by and be that type of snobby heel. But then initially, Young Bucks don't agree to the stipulation, and then Ospreay basically says, hey, what about this? And he tells Swerve to trust him, and he says, hey, if we lose, me and Swerve can't challenge for the world title for a year. And that was a no pun intended, a swerve and a half. Because if you guys let me explain what this does. Because one, on a short-term level, it makes that match at All In Texas completely unpredictable. Because now you can make a case that the Bucks could win. You can make a case that Swerve and Ospreay can win. And either way, it creates compelling television, because then if the Bucks lose, what's their future like? How's their identity going to be framed? They could go a number of different directions there. If Swerve and Ospreay lose and the Bucks win, that means Swerve and Ospreay can't challenge for a world title for a year. That means Will Ospreay's out of the world title picture. Swerve Strickland is out of the world title picture. That is a big deal. Those are two heavy hitters that are out of the picture. Swerve could be mad at Ospreay because Ospreay did this and Swerve reluctantly agreed to it. What's the other piece of this that we need to talk about? Hangman Adam Page, who's challenging for the world championship, who Swerve does not like. I'll say they hate each other. And what if Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay lose that match earlier on at All In Texas, and then amidst the Texas death match, because now that's open up for a bunch of fuckery. Let's just call it what it is. The Texas death match, it's going to be violent. It's going to be graphic. It's going to be all over the place. And above all else, it is just going to be loaded with fuckery. And it's just going to be totally chaotic all over the place. But what if Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay lose? Swerve's so distraught, goes and screws his mortal enemy out of winning the world championship, setting up a heel turn and the next chapter of the greatest rivalry in AEW history. Meanwhile, Will Ospreay waits a year and he can potentially have his crowning moment at All In Wembley Stadium in 2026, which is what I've been saying from jump when he lost the Owen Hart Cup tournament. Get more of that story built in for Will Ospreay, because now Will is probably going to potentially be feuding with a now heel Swerve Strickland. It frees up the main event picture. You've got other options to potentially go. Darby Allin could win the gauntlet. And, at that point, I'm okay, because at least you give some storylines. You've got MJF potentially fresh and ready to go back into the main event picture. Like Darby, he doesn't even have to win the gauntlet. Like, there's a lot of ways. And as crazy as this sounds, that might be the best option. I love Hangman Page. You guys know who subscribed to this channel. I think he's the best character that AEW has. This may not be a popular opinion, but Hangman winning in the fashion that everybody wants, and obviously that's the best story that we built in. But and I'm not necessarily sure that in terms of if I were booking the show that I would do this, because it's very risky, and a lot of fans are hanging on Hangman. But if you are dead set in trying to create more long-term, potential avenues, because Swerve and Hangman reuniting, are we ready for that? I don't know. And you have a built-in out to potentially cast on a year's worth of stories and go in a bunch of different directions. And to me, this is something that AEW needs. If you give Hangman the championship, now you're asking yourself, okay, you've got MJF potentially. What's Darby Allin going to do? If the reality is the Death Riders are going to end. And I've come to terms with this, that they're going to end at some point. I thought Hangman should be the guy. He should be the crowning point. But this Swerve and Hangman feud has been something that has been so epic and so violent and so over the top. And abruptly ending it for a feel-good moment in Texas, it's fine. But I'm also thinking about this, and just like with that one decision that they made to up the stakes in this match, you've now got options for what the Bucks could do if their characters have to change. And I've been over the EVP character for a while. And then obviously the Swerve and Ospreay angle, you potentially cast out two. Like, listen, Cody Rhodes literally hamstrung himself literally day one, or literally almost day one of AEW, where he basically lost to Chris Jericho. He couldn't challenge for the world title his entire AEW career. And he was gone 3 years later. So, it's crazy. And now they go with this 1 year stipulation. It keeps Ospreay away from the world title scene because he's one of their biggest stars. Swerve, he stays away from it. You got an easy path to give him a heel turn. And, Hangman, maybe it's not a guarantee that he wins. And then you could potentially have an exciting end if you want to go with Darby Allin cashing in that contract on Jon Moxley at the end of a Texas death match, which guys are going to be beating the piss out of each other. It's a perfect opportunity to do that and create a really iconic ending there. Now, like I said, if it were me, from the long-term payoff perspective of what they've been building, Hangman makes a lot of sense. But if you want to continue this and have this story continue on past All In, maybe you go the other route. It create All In all of a sudden with one night of television. And this shouldn't be this way. AEW has got to be better at booking these shows and booking towards these pay-per-views in the long term. But I don't know if I've ever seen one singular decision really change this entire build up on its ear. Omega and Okada, fine, whatever. But the match that I am most intrigued by, obviously, in this entire thing, the match I was most intrigued by, obviously, was Hangman and Moxley because, hey, that's the world title. We haven't seen the world title in almost a year. This has got to be the payoff. But now the match that I'm really paying attention to is Hangman and Ospreay, or is Swerve and Ospreay against the Bucks, because that's going to tell you how that's going to create a fascinating scenario at the end of the show. And I initially said on the live stream that maybe this doesn't main event, and maybe it doesn't. I don't know, but I'm here to tell you there's a good chance that it does, and if it does, it's going to create a fascinating conclusion to this show, no matter what the result of that is. Because if Ospreay and Swerve win, then, creates the chaos at the end. Ospreay and Swerve can align and, try to help Hangman. If they lose, then Swerve has all the motive to go screw over his mortal enemy. There's a lot to dissect there, and it's fascinating. And I give credit. I mean, hey, one singular decision, whether it was luck or whether it was just genius thinking, this has set off a different stage of events of what could happen a week from Saturday at Globe Life Field in Texas, because everything that we thought that we knew or everything we thought we wanted to see, there's another possibility and another roadmap there that isn't so terrible. And I was ready to kill this company if they went a certain route. And we'll see what they do. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt because this is really an interesting situation to keep your eyes on. But the match that I'm looking forward to now is no longer that world title match, because whatever happens in that match is going to, the tag match that I referenced, that's going to play a direct role in the main event. So whatever happens there, it's going to lead into that. And that's good storytelling right there. And that's something that AEW has not had, and it could lead to a bunch of possibilities down the line. So anyway, thanks so much to everybody who subscribed here on the channel, who was on the live stream. We'll have a lot more content coming up here on the channel. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.